Greetings. Is my voice coming through here? I'll get it. All right. Well, welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday morning Dharma talk. And this week we have Kyoku Tracey Walen. She began practicing Buddhism in 1998, and she was ordained in 2008 and given Dharma transmission by Byakuren Judith Ragir in 2015. She trained from 2008 to 2010 at Great Vow Monastery. Currently, she resides at and supports Hokyoji, and also serves as a Zen teacher at Clouds and Waters Zen Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. So, good morning, Kyoku. How are things down there? You're wrapping up the just sitting retreat. I'm guessing that's gone, but that's where a bunch of our regulars are. They're sitting in the Zendo right now. So, anyway, please take it on.
I will. What I want to show you a picture in just a moment. So can you pin me so that when I hold it up to the screen, you know what I'm saying? You're muted.
Ha, there we are. You are pinned.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. So thank you for being here, everybody. We have 13 people in the Zendo who are presumably practicing the Dharma. I can't say that because I can prove it, but I can feel it. I've been here since Tuesday. And I've really been wrestling with this talk because next week we will elect another president. And that's, I realized that I've been in fear and trembling about that for some period of time. So my reflections have really centered around now what? So here's where I want to show you my picture. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Hold,
It looks
hold it still.
okay. So this is my calendar for October.
Yeah,
And these are,
it's blurry.
it's blurry. Oh, shall I unblur?
No, it's not your fault. I think the camera can't focus on it. There, hold it. It's going in and out of focus there. We can see, yes, the bird with the black stripe across the eye.
You can see a mom, a dad, and a baby bird.
Oh.
And they're so clear. You know, it's like somebody posed them for the picture. But when I was beginning this talk, I labeled it "Now What?" And I was picturing one of the adult birds saying, "Now what?" And the other one looking back and saying, "I don't know." And the baby bird saying, "Let's go." And I thought, so it it's sort of how I talk to myself every day when I look at it, in that sense of just where I think all of us are. So I want to talk a little bit. I'll try to do it concisely. So here's what's going through my mind. If Trump wins, we lose our democracy. If Kamala wins, will that stop us from losing our democracy? And what to do? What to do? Well, I think, well, we all kind of know the answer. Keep practicing. But in the same way, we kind of don't know the answer. We don't know exactly what that looks like and how it helps. Personally, I think this question and this foreboding and this concern for me really started with Nixon's resignation. And I was like 21 when that was happening. So I know that for our own people that are 21 now, it's a big question, but just for the whole country, whether we say it out loud to ourselves or not, how are we going to keep a healthy democracy? We're just human beings, infallible. And for me, added to that is I'm really beginning to notice that I'm aging, despite my best efforts to ignore it. And I have another book for you, but I'll tell you what it is. It's a book of poems by Louis Jenkins, who is a prose poet that I'm not sure that he's still alive, but he lives on the North Shore. And I really like his poems, and he's got one entitled On Aging. There are no compensations for growing old, certainly not wisdom. And one gave up anticipating heaven long ago. Perhaps there is a kind of anesthesia resulting from short-term memory loss, from diminished libido, from apathy and fatigue that is mistaken for patience. The rich can afford to grow old gracefully, but the flesh of the poor shows each defeat like a photographic plate that records the movement of the planets and the stars and the rotation of the earth. Eyesight fails and hearing, the skin wrinkles and cracks, the bones twist, the muscles degenerate. It takes all morning to open a can of soup. The world collapses inward. Memory is no recompense. The past is fiction, a story of interest only to the young. There is only, as there always was, the moment. The instant which, when you become aware of it, is blinding as the flash when someone snaps a picture of you blowing out the candles. So let me talk about what we do with it. I recently, as we approached the election, felt moved to read Viktor Frankl's Man Searching for Meaning, because that's part of our history. This is somebody that actually went through the camps, Hitler's camps, and for years, and was separated from his spouse and family. He had a chance to leave Europe before he was put into a camp. But he found that he couldn't do it because his parents, who urged him to leave, he wanted to be there for them. He wanted to take care of them as best was possible, which turned out to be quite difficult. And so he eventually ended up in a camp. I don't know what happened to his parents. He's best known for saying, forces beyond your control can take away everything, but you possess except one thing, your freedom to choose how you will respond. It is this spiritual freedom which cannot be taken away. So that's why I turned to him, because I have had that insight, but I wanted to hear more, which he very much gives us in his book. Because this question of now what was constantly made impossible. Survival that I cannot possibly understand, but can only get an idea of for him and for so many in the history of man. Native Americans being just one, people of color another. It's been part of human history. But I thought to myself, what else did he have to say in this book of his, which is relatively short? It's not like a big, long book, but he starts it by giving us startling detail about it, exactly how it unfolded, both for him on an everyday basis and his compadres. And this is what really came through for me, because he gives you the experience and then he says, and here's what I want you to know, to learn what I can offer you from that experience. He said, he who has a why to live, he who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. Actually, Nietzsche said that, but he said the same thing. It did not really matter what we expect from life, but rather what life expects from us. So this was something he'd actually been working on before he was put in the camp. He had written down a lot of thoughts, and then everything, your hair, your clothing, all of your positions, and really all of your ideas about being a human being were taken when you entered the camps. So almost everybody, millions, as we know now, millions that entered the camps, sought for an answer or gave up trying for an answer. But here was Victor, and he struggled with it, and he struggled with it and struggled with it, and inside himself, he was looking for how to stand up to what he thought was important. And for him, this was a big, big insight, that this isn't about me being good enough. Essentially, this isn't about me. And he turned in a direction that's, very, very like what the Buddha did. And he realized, he said, oh, what I really need to do is look to what's needed in this life. So I'm going to read again what he said. It did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. And you really need, I think, to read the book. I'm not doing a great job, but of conveying why that's important. But what it really speaks to, I think, is to what a lot of us certainly here at Hokyoji, but a lot of us in practicing Buddhism are trying to do, which is to step outside this idea that there's a me, and step into the what Buddha did was said this great powerful question: is there a way of non-suffering? So to really plumb the depths of that, and especially if we have faith in what the Buddha taught, practice what he practiced and what Viktor Frankl seemed to practice as well, which is non-harming, but also really, really seeing what's true. I've asked Carl to put in the chat books a link to Bernie Glassman's 3 tenets. I think a lot of you are very familiar with them, but I want to repeat them because we need that. We need that. Well, I need that. I don't know about you. I need that. But I'm going to summarize them, and the link will take you to the essentially the website that upholds Bernie Glassman's teachings. So he has these 3 tenets: not knowing, which he meant letting go of fixed ideas about yourself, others, and the universe. What's really happening? And he summarizes it by saying our lives are unstable. All life is unstable. That's the way that the world works. This is the same thing then the Buddha points out. This life is not what we think it is, and it is not around us. How do we possibly let that go? How do we possibly take it in? Being present, not knowing, trains you to continually set aside fixed points of view. An empty vessel refuses nothing and receives everything. So right there, that helps me with my now what? My now what is really a recommitment to what I'm already doing. And what can seem like, well, are you saying do nothing? And it's like, Viktor Frankl didn't do nothing, even though his circumstances were almost impossible to survive. But if we, I think it sheds light on what he means by it. If we look to what life is calling to us to see, to understand, then that is the way of non-suffering. And there is a way of non-suffering. But as long as we are more directed out of ignorance at somehow doing something with me, that will be an obstacle for us, even though there's challenges no matter what we do. Thirdly, about knowing, essentially, Bernie said, expanding the circle. Life excludes nothing. We exclude nothing. And thus there is an alignment. There's no separation. We're there. And that changes our understanding of what we're about. It gets some things out of the way of being as impermanent and changeable as the truth of life. So we fully live in this life instead of living in it with suffering. The second tenet, bearing witness to the joy and suffering of the world. Arise and past training develops awareness with a curious and compassionate attitude, enabling wise choice. So for me, a lot of times the question comes up, well, what are you doing? Well, you have to take action. This is one of what Viktor Frankl's teaching was. Our answer must consist not in talk and meditation, although that sounds like a contradiction. I don't think it is. Not in talk and meditation, but in right action and in right conduct. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. So that's bearing witness without bias, without ideas. It takes a lot of effort and training. We can read in Buddha's life, in the teachings that he left, how challenging that is. How challenging that is. The second thing under bearing witness is we enable wise choice when we take the world as it is, when we take the time to, as a first noble truth says in Buddhist teaching, penetrate the truth of suffering. Penetrate the truth. We really have to know it. And it takes a lot. It took a lot for the Buddha, it took a lot for Viktor Frankl, and it takes a lot for us. So somehow, for quite a long time, I think I had an idea that happiness would be mine forever if I got enlightened. There'd be no more bad days. And so that's the kind of thinking that we just have to be able to see through. And that's what bearing witness is about. There's no way to gain that understanding except getting on the bicycle and riding. It can't be done for us. And the second part of bearing witness is living the fullness of your own humanity, excluding nothing, not ignoring, not grasping, not rejecting. That sounds impossible, but part of what practice helps us understand is that it is possible because we see change. One of the things that really penetrated deeply for me in my first maybe 5 years of practicing Buddhism was how possible it was to see changes both in myself, but also all around me. And we were still the me's that, that we came to Buddhism with, but we were changing. And it's not something I could really articulate. It had to be kind of known and seen. And it didn't seem to help to talk about it a lot, but it just kind of sits in the heart and all the chakras, and maybe all the cells too. But that different seeing makes such a big difference. So really sitting still and committing and noticing, in a very visceral way. I mean, particularly now as I'm 74 now, and it's like, wow, I kept thinking I knew something about old age because I got to, go through it with my parents, some of my grandparents, people I know, my brother, his wife. I mean, in the last last 3 or 4 months, I've done a lot of bearing witness to death and old age. And still, it will surprise me how I'll all of a sudden realize ignorance is a big deal. It includes the word ignore, the things and really seeing how facile I become or how kind of dead I become if I'm ignoring. It's like I when I'm pushing something aside, um, the practice of bearing witness really helps turn me into, well, this is the first noble truth. It's like explore this, understand it, penetrate it. And then of course there's the other part, which is and then do something differently. So that's taking action that arises from not knowing and bearing witness, right? So being willing to completely take everything in, experience it, notice it, go through it, see exactly how pain works. The underlying intention is that the action that arises be a caring action, which serves everyone and everything, including yourself, in the whole situation. Is that not what Viktor Frankl, one among many, 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 did? And is not that what human beings have been doing? And for that matter, the whole universe has been doing since we've become aware of it. So it's aligning ourselves with something that's hard to see and that we don't like. And in some ways, kind of embracing, equipping ourselves to embrace and be with everything. Training with the tenets is a matter of taking a backward step again and again and continually discerning your internal processes in the midst of acknowledging what is happening around you. So that's a pretty good instruction for now what, from my standpoint. I can pretty much know whether I'm in that place or not. And if I'm confused, well then, as Bernie would say, return to steps 1 and 2. Not knowing and bearing witness. Training with the tenets brings about resiliency of the spiritual muscles and an ever-deepening sense of reality. As life unfolds around you, the 3 tenets are active inside of you, always directing you back to the center. Except when you get lost. But then, you get to go to meditation in the morning because you've got a group that you're practicing with. Even though it doesn't look exactly like Buddhist practice. Let me look at time. Yeah, so it's almost 10 o'clock. I want to maybe just say a little bit more, but what I'd really like to invite us to do is to share some of our own personal experiences, practices, struggles in a time where all of us are thinking about next week. And all of us, whether we're 2 or 200, are experiencing the 5 remembrances. And then, of course, there's remembering the 5 remembrances. So the 5 remembrances are, I am of the nature to grow old, to get sick, to die, to be separated from everything and everyone that I love and cherish, and stand on the ground of my own very special, totally unique and unrepeatable karma, and grapple with that karma. Grapple with that like other things that I may not like or that I can get carried away with. So, a couple of things. The Buddha was asked at one point, gee, it seems like the more people that practice the Dharma, this was, I think, who was it? I think it might have been Mahapajapati said to the Buddha, why is it that the more people we get, essentially, the more rules we set down? And in the Pali Canon, I'm a big fan of this book, The Life of the Buddha, which it's can't see it because it's fuzzy. Anyway, The Life of the Buddha. And I particularly appreciate it because it tries to arrange what he taught and all the things that we have in writing into a chronological order. So you get a chance to see what's what. And one of the things that was clear is that he taught the same things over and over and over and over again. And I just he gave a talk on the 7 things that are needed to prosper and prevent the decline of the Dharma. Because his response to that question about why with more people are we having more problems was exactly what the Buddha taught. It's like, take a look out there. This is a continually fluctuating environment. Things change. So the Buddha said, even though he spent 45 years teaching what he understood again and again, he said, there will come a time when nobody knows anything about these teachings. We will have completely lost them. And that did not stop him, obviously, from continuing his teachings, although when he first fully realized to the depths of being a Buddha, what he was learning, what he was understanding, what was true, his first response was, oh, it's so subtle. I don't, it would just be so wearying to try to teach this because there's so many people that aren't attuned to it. But then some spirit came along from some place that I don't know yet, or at least now, and said, wait a second, take a look out there. There are some people. He's talking about us. There's some people out there that'll listen, that will engage in this practice. So there's a section in here. Let me see. You probably all have heard of the kind of a crisis in Kosambi, where there was a very subtle, very picayune, according to me and my understanding, disagreement between two guys in the Sangha, and that developed into sort of sides. So people started taking sides. And the Buddha came and talked to them, and he spent time and he tried some things. And finally, he basically said, I'm done. You guys go ahead and fight it out. I've given you my best shot. Now it's up to you. And he went off and became an island as he does. And what did he do? Yeah, let me just see here. Is that nope, that's not the one I want. Kosambi. Kosambi. He found 3 monks. Actually, we don't even know if they were monks, but they were 3 practitioners. And he stopped and greeted them and was curious about them. And so here's something of how it happened. He says, I hope that all of you are well, that you are comfortable, and that you have no trouble on account of alms food. And they said, we are well. And he said, I hope that you all live in concord on Aruda, as friendly and undisputing as milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Surely we do so. The Venerable Anuruddha, who is apparently the spokesman for this group of 3, I think that it is, surely we do. So then the Buddha says, well, how do you live this way? The way that you're living, that he observed was so refreshing and so clear and so non-suffering. And so the spokesperson Anuruddha says, I maintain acts and words and thoughts of loving kindness towards these venerable ones, both in public and in private. I think, why should I not set aside what I am minded to do and do only what they are minded to do? And I act accordingly. We are different in body, Lord, but only one in mind, I think. And the other 2 said, Lord, that is how we live in concord, as friendly and undisputing as milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Good, says Buddha. I hope you all dwell diligent, ardent, and self-controlled. And they go, yeah, that's right. That's what we do. And then he tests them. He says, well, how do you dwell thus? And he says, whichever of us returns first from the village with an alms food, gets the seats ready, sets out the water for drinking and for washing, and puts the refuse bucket in its place. Whichever of us returns last eats any food left over, if he wishes. Otherwise, he throws it away where there is no grass, or drops it into the water where there is no life. He puts away the seats and the water for drinking and for washing. He puts away the refuse bucket after washing it, and he sweeps out the refectory. Whoever notices that the pots of drinking water or washing water or water for the privy are low or empty sees to it. If any are too heavy for him, he beckons somebody else by a sign of the hand, and they move it by joining hands. We do not speak for that purpose, but every 5 days we sit out the night together and talk on the Dharma. It is in this way that we dwell diligent, ardent, and self-controlled. So this is such a simple description, but it's exactly what the way the Buddha lives with his disciples. And he gave many talks. He repeated again and again. The teachings on basically how to prosper and prevent decline in the practice. And one of the things that happened when Shariputra talked with him about why when there's so many more coming, are we getting basically more problems and more rules? So Shariputra and the Buddha have a conversation, and this is a teaching that the Buddha frequently offered, which is, well, what do we have to be doing in order to prosper and not decline? And I think the most important thing to convey about that is it involved a lot of stuff. So first of all, there was essentially, you need a sangha. You need to talk to each other. You need to treat each other well, just like these three gentlemen did. I think when I looked at it, I was like, wow. When I look at the 275 rules for the guys and then the 300 some rules for the gals that we ended up with as, if you're a monk or a nun, this is what you have to do. I thought there's not going to be a whole lot of people that are going to want to do that, including, the way I'm doing things right now. And I'm probably in better circumstances than most. But he also, the Buddha is continually teaching these things, and he had 7 things in this program. And I think in today's world, we already can easily see that there's a lot of what he asked his monks to do that we don't want to do, and think would be better if we didn't do, because we're not attracting people. And the Buddha articulated this and said, there are certain things that need to be done to hold things together. But at first, when there's not very many people, then we don't have to have a lot of rules to make that happen. But once it becomes more popular in some form or another, then we have to have those rules. We have to have those rules in order to have essentially a chance of making this last as long as possible. So I had a long talk with Shariputra, who was like, okay, well, tell me about this. I want to learn about this. And he talks to Shariputra, and he includes this idea of concord and being with each other, like these 3 guys. Every 5 days, we sit down and we talk. We talk through the night, and then we go back and do our individual practice, because that's the heart of that, really. So he also talks about the 7 enlightenment factors. So there are things, and those we teach, but again, are we actively developing that? That's part of what I realized is the now what that for now is true is when we see how difficult a place we're in terms of the world and how many bad places that could take us, then we can rely upon these teachings to keep us going. Simply said, one of the things he does is, just the 4 Noble Truths. Really understand how it arises, be completely willing to do whatever's necessary to eradicate the causes of it, and then keep doing that no matter what else is going on around you. And one of the things he says that I've always had difficulty with, but he says it on the last day he's alive, and that is make of yourself an island. So do just what he did. It's like we each have to do this in our own lives anyway. Um, so it really points me back to me and what am I doing with my life? And to Bernie's part of taking action, we need to embody it of um, here's what I'm going to concentrate on and get over, in my case, the idea that it's about me being an excellent person, somebody who can walk around and kind of go, well, I'm doing it, which happens. I get, I get an ego. Um, and then really extending myself in ways that aren't comfortable is the other piece that I see for myself. So it's 10:14. We have some time. I hope that we also have the will to just talk a little bit about how this particular time in our mutual lives, we are working with practice and this question of now what, how, maybe share a little bit about the difficulties and or the inspirations that you see in your own life. And maybe we can help each other in the same way those three monks were doing out there. So I'm gonna you can unpin me, Carl, and a reminder that there is a link in the chat box, I believe, to the Bernie Glassman's 3 tenets. It's short and it's very helpful. So
Unfortunately, you didn't send me that link, Kyoko.
I didn't send you that link?
No.
I probably can still put it in the chat. Is that right?
Yeah, you can, or send it to me. I can get it in there, but
Okay.
I didn't
I
find
thought
the
I
text
sent it.
or
Did you look at your phone? I thought I sent it.
yeah, but I can't go from my phone to, I can't put a text into the chat box,
Okay.
but
Okay.
anyway. But it's easy to Google Bernie Glassman's teachings.
Well, I can send it to you. I think, well, never mind. I'd rather have our conversation, even if you wouldn't. I'm going to mute myself just in case that, well, no, I think I don't really even have to do that. So,
Do we have any comments?
yeah, what's on your mind these days?
Well,
What are you noticing?
I'll start out with two 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 things that occurred to me. First one is that translation from the Buddha's deathbed about become an island to yourself is also translated as become a light unto yourself, and apparently the Pali can go either way, and it's the difference is there. Anyway, it could be a light, it could be an island. Then I wanted to comment about the bearing witness practice. And I know Bernie Glassman did the street retreats and all of that. And I've heard other teachers talking about it. It almost always is about bearing witness to suffering or the consequences of suffering, to see that it doesn't go unnoticed. But they don't very often talk about bearing witness to the joyful. If all you're doing is bearing witness to the suffering of the world, your days are going to be tough. and it kind of goes back to the Brahma Viharas where they talk about the cultivation of joy. And and I think bearing witness to joy, I mean, you go to the park and see a playground with kids running around or something like that, or a walk in the woods. You know, there are a lot of things that, you can bear witness to the joy of that arises occasionally, at least. Uh, it's just, anyway, I just wanted to make that point that just bearing witness to the negative can get heavy if that's a steady diet. That's what it seems to me. So, anyway, thanks.
Thank you. I'd have to say that in my life, bearing witness to joy has become possible. Maybe, my very short little story is that until I was about 40 or so, um, I in my 40s, I had one of those moments that you do in your 40s, which is a now what moment. And I thought, wow, I really am not excited about living another 40 years. And I would like to be, and I'm sure that there's a way, and I just don't know what it is. Um, and that led me essentially in a direction, stumbling along, of deciding that I would just see if I could do a better job of asking other people about how they live with joy or observing that. And I would have to say that that's a part of my day every day now. It's like I've changed from a person of woe with a backup suicide plan to a person of really quiet and sometimes loud joy. It's just a big difference. It makes it a lot easier to practice. Who else? Thank you for that, Carl.
Hi, Kyoku. I wonder if you could give some examples of how you experience and remember peace and joy.
Well, being in this place helps an enormous amount. Um, and part of that is um, the um, whenever there's anybody else here, it's like, oh, there's a unity of direction, and it just comes up and it makes me smile. I just smile automatically. Um, I walk down the path in the morning, and I usually begin the walk with some list of to-dos, some set of complaints, or something of that nature. And because I've been practicing returning just to this moment, just being here without judgment, I remember that. I remember that, probably 100 times between the time I leave my bedroom and get to the kitchen. But that's part of the practice, and I smile because I look up and it's an inexpressible joy. It's just I'm here and one of the most fortunate people on the earth. And you're a part of that, Mr. Alex.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for
David, I've been seeing you be responsive. Please jump in.
I guess what you were talking at first about next week and the trepidation. I think, you know, on the one hand, I worry about not myself so much, but about my spouse and the future that he will have based on which person ends up next week winning. And but then I have to sometimes bring myself back to what Uchiyama said is that the future doesn't exist. And so I have to come back to being in the present and just being living with what is now rather than worrying about, how is it going to affect us? How is it going to affect him? How is this going to all work out? What am I going to do? I mean, do we need to be really vigilant about our safety? Well, probably, but right now we're fine. So I just bring myself back to that and to just, I mean, that is bringing myself back to the present and trying to um, just be in the present and be with what we have now.
Yeah, and when you come back to the present, and maybe you can answer Alex's question from your standpoint, because we all have this to grapple with. It's like,
Well, I just look for the joy in our relationship and what we do together, and so to see. So that's what brings us joy. And you also don't want to get too attached to that, but I think that's not really a horrible attachment. Being happy with the way things are in the moment. So yeah, that's where I go to, I guess.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I haven't seen a John came in. I don't know if he's in there or not. But if you're there, John, please speak to us. In the meantime, maybe we can get a few pearls of wisdom from Aaron.
Well, I'm here, just not feeling great, so I decided just to X out the video thing. Yeah, I share the concerns of I think most of us about next week in the future and that sort of thing, and yeah, I just have no idea. You know, none of us do, of course, is how it's going to turn out or the results of what happens in terms of long term. So, yeah, I just kind of right in the middle, so to speak, and just getting along and going along. I don't have a lot to say this morning. So anyway, but thank you. Thank you for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you for piping up. Thank you for piping up.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where we all are, isn't it?
Yeah.
This now what question. And I don't, I think this, I think I'll shut up and ask Erin if she'd like to contribute.
Oh, I just know I've just so appreciated your talk, Kyoku, and the things people have said. Yeah, I too have been thinking about joy, as you know, and maybe because I'm a librarian, or used to be, just what exactly does that mean? And it's an interesting question for me. If is the absence of suffering the same thing as joy? The toothache that you don't have from Thich Nhat Hanh, right, is joy, right? But we might not recognize it. So yeah, the same questions, and thank you for bringing it to us.
I think for me, it's always a what I'm really noticing is that when I returned to some of my study of what the Buddha taught and what other people teach it, both in their lives and their books and stuff like that, I find myself going there, and I kind of recognize that part of the reason I go to books is because I'm not feeling all that ready to jump in and change my life, change what I do and how I do it. And it makes me realize that I really need to be willing to struggle with that, be willing to bring that to mind and ask that question. Because the answers for any individual life are unique to that individual, and to step out of self-criticism or shoulds or a picture of what my life should look like. I have these conversations in my head with myself about, well, hiding from what's there to be known if I open up to it. And if I open up to it with, reluctance, whatever it is, but to really be willing to probe my own internal experience and what's around me, and to it's such a contradiction, really. How do I probe me without me? And so part of that is recognizing that I need to, it's sort of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The more I'm willing to ask the questions and stay with the questions in every moment, just coming back to not so much neutral, but just not wandering off into meanness or thinkingness, is it's difficult because I have shame. One of the things the Buddha talks about that we need is to develop tolerance for shame, because it can speak in very positive ways to us. So it's 10:31. It's time for me to say goodbye. But I just want to thank you for showing up. Thank you, because probably every one of you has made a contribution monetarily to making a place where somebody of no religion or Buddhist religion, this is such a healing environment. And one of the conditions that the Buddha talks about is, living with trees and in places to to have good friends that I can have this kind of a conversation with. So I'll turn it back to you, Carl.
Thank you, Kyoku. You're talking about living with the trees, and my favorite T-shirt is "May the forest be with you." Well, thanks so much for that provocative, or maybe not too provocative, but very thoughtful. It was, Anyway, thanks so much for that talk. We got upcoming, I think next week is Ado Phoebe Sandstedt will be giving the talk. I think Dokai is hosting that one. And where am I? And then Musho Darren, which is somebody who works with GD, with Gentle Dragon. He's giving the talk, a way-seeking talk on November 10th. And then after that, it's Anryu GD is going to give a talk on practicing the way, Zen and Vipassana. And they actually have a retreat on the 14th? On the 14th of November, which is 2.5 weeks or so. Her and Patrice will be talking about the similarities and the differences, I'm guessing, of the Vipassana and Zen. It should be pretty interesting. Where am I? I'm losing where I am here. There we are. I'm back to you. So more to come. And I know that will be after the election. So we do have the election coming up, and I think we're going to have to just, deal with it whichever way it goes, it seems. I mean, we live in a divided country. There's 47% feels one way, 47% feels another way. You got, 6% left that doesn't know what they think. And, we just do our best, huh? All right. I think we'll wrap this up now with the 4 vows. And thanks so much for everybody showing up here. So, beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. There we go.
Goodbye, Lulu.
Hey, Lulu. Hi there. Good looking dog. Yeah.
She's been paying a lot of attention. She's learning.
Yeah. Great. All right. Take care, my friends.
You guys.
All right.